right, ladies and gentlemen, I think we're getting ready to get started. I think there might be some chairs in the back for those of you that are standing. If you don't want to stand on this 89-degree October 1st day.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. There are plenty of chairs in the back if you'd like to sit. So I'd just like to, before we get started, I just want to make one quick announcement about the facility. Just so everybody is aware and not startled, at 6:30, there is going to be a training session starting in the gun range, which is attached to this building. I just want to let people know so that you're not startled. It's going to start around 6:30. Just FYI. Okay.
Hey everybody, I want to welcome you here to the Multi-Lakes Conservation Association. My name's Lori Goldman, and I thank you for taking time out of your day to be here today. I'd like to introduce to you a woman who represents Michigan's 11th District, which includes Commerce Township, where we are, co-president of the freshman class, and she also serves on House Science, Space, and Technology Committee, and on the House Education and Labor Committee. I'd like you to give a warm welcome to our Congresswoman for the 11th District, Haley Stevens.
Excuse me, everyone. Representative Maddox is here, and he's going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. If you could all join in and stand up, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, born and unborn.
Mr. Maddox, and thank you all so much for joining this evening. I have had almost 20 town halls, community conversations, coffee hours, and this is by far one of our most well-attended. So thank you for dedicating some of your evening to be here, to participate, to lean in your democracy. Transparency as your member of Congress is paramount to me, and that is why we are having tonight's town hall. I want to thank the Multi-Lakes Conservation Association for hosting this evening's dialogue. This is really a special place. They are celebrating 77 years as an association, as a club that's dedicated to something I think we can all agree on, the love of the outdoors here in Michigan. As members, you can go fishing on Reed Lake, you can do outdoors activities, and you can certainly enjoy responsible gun ownership. And so we want to thank the association for having us here, respecting the dialogue that we are all going to have. And I want to say too, it's also very special to be in Commerce. My district, Michigan's 11th District, covers about 24 communities, and Commerce is one of those communities. And I have enjoyed running in Dodge Park. I've enjoyed getting to know our Commerce Township Supervisor. I really believe in hands-on, table-setting government so that we can solve problems and come together. Now, we know we're going to be talking about today gun violence, and we are going to be talking about common sense gun safety legislation, and how we want to do so is respectfully and with the facts. And I want to make sure, as I say, with everybody who comes to my town halls and everyone who's at the town halls of Fritz Craig and Robert Wittenberg, that viewpoints are welcome, respectful dialogue is welcome. I am a newer member of Congress. I have the privilege of serving on the House Science, Space, and Technology Committee, as well as the House Education and Labor Committee. And I do believe that the time has come for us to pass common sense gun safety legislation in this country. I'd like to see us pass those universal background checks. to recognize what the significance of today represents, which is that 2 years ago, 58 people lost their lives to a mass shooter in Las Vegas, and many other were injured. And we know, because Michigan's 11th district is home to incredible families, incredible schools, that safety is paramount. And that is what we take the oath to honor as new members of Congress. That is my charge as a member of Congress, which is to put into place respectful legislation that is going to prioritize the safety of the people that I represent. So that's a part of the dialogue that I'm going to be having with you all here today. Thank you again so much for being here.
I would next like to introduce the House Democratic Leader, Christine Gregg.
Thank you, Lori. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having us here tonight. Thank you, Fems for Dems, for hosting this as well, and thank you for being here. This is truly what democracy looks like, so I thank every single one of you for being here tonight. My name is Chris Gregg. I represent just down the road, Farmington Hills, and the city of Farmington as well. And we're working in Lansing on a lot of different issues right now, right? And as we tackle the budget, as we tackle long-term roads funding, we also need to look at other areas where we can come together and work together to make Michigan a stronger, safer state. And we have been working on legislation to address gun violence in our state. We, for years, have talked about red flag laws. I'm a Hoosier by birth. We can get into some of the details later. But I am a Hoosier by birth. Indiana has had these red flag laws under Governor Mike Pence. They were initiated, and we've seen the positive benefits of these kind of laws reducing gun violence. So my colleague Robert Wittenberg will talk more about these bills, but that's one thing where we've seen a lot of public support to do this type of thing right here in Michigan. And we can't even get a hearing in it. I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Over 20,000 gun laws in Michigan went up.
Yeah, you know, a lot of those gun laws are making it easier. So, you know, again, we want to be respectful. This is my all right, let me continue here. We also have legislation on safe storage of guns as well. We know that 50% of incidents with kids under 18 years old, if we had stronger gun storage laws, we could also reduce gun violence in that. Also, intimate partner legislation. 50% of the homicides with intimate partner deaths are involved in gun as well. We've seen these laws implemented in other states, and we've seen the positive effects of reducing gun violence. So there's a lot of common sense. There's a lot of common sense legislation we can work on together. And I know I've got several colleagues here joining us as well. Representative Matt Maddock already introduced himself. So thank you for being here as well. We also have State Representative Matt Kolazar and Representative Mara Manoukian. So we are up in Lansing working together day in and day out on a whole host of issues. But the real focus is coming together, finding common ground, and trying to reduce gun violence. More than 1,100 Michiganders die every year due to gun violence. Now, I think everyone in this room could agree that that's too many. One is too many. One is too many. So there are absolutely things we can do to reduce gun violence in this state. But it's going to take all of us working together to make that happening. And these public debates and public hearings, we would love to get a hearing up in Lansing so we can have an open and honest debate with our colleagues up in Lansing. And so with your support, with your help, we want to further this debate and start reducing gun violence right here in Michigan. So again, thank you for coming. We appreciate your time, and we appreciate your respectfulness. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to introduce Representative Robert Wittenberg.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Lori. Thank you all for being here. My name's Robert Wittenberg. I'm state representative down in southeast Oakland County, serving in my third term here in the legislature. And during my first term, I actually founded and started our Legislative Gun Violence Prevention Caucus. And so I want people to understand that we are not anti-gun, we are anti-gun violence. And supporting the Second Amendment and being opposed to gun violence are not mutually exclusive. We are working on things. We're working on bills that respect gun owners' rights, but we're doing what we can to try to mitigate gun violence here in our state. Now, this is an important issue to me. My senior year of high school, actually, I graduated high school in 1999. I went to Berkeley High School, and that was the same year that the Columbine shooting happened in Littleton, Colorado. So this is something that's been on my mind since I was very young, and I've been working on this my whole time in the legislature. Now, I want to talk about a couple things, because I don't want to talk too broad on these. I'll actually talk about some specifics, because I'm proud to say that I've been the leading sponsor for the red flag legislation the last 3 terms. And I want to, what I've heard, and I want you guys to realize, because we've had these conversations, I've had a lot of conversations with people who came in originally opposed to the red flag legislation, but once you go through the specifics, they are supportive. And I can tell you, I'm going to tell you the truth about this legislation, because I wrote this legislation. We've worked with our Oakland County Sheriff here, Sheriff Bouchard, Mike Bouchard. We worked across the aisle. I'm a Democrat, he is a Republican. We were able to come together to craft this legislation. And so I just want to be clear on this. We are limited as to who can, so what this legislation does is, if somebody is a threat to themselves or someone else, we have I'll go through it with you guys if you give me just 1 minute. If someone is a threat to themselves or someone else, we need to take that threat seriously. And what we do with this legislation is we let family members or law enforcement initiate it, but there's due process, because a judge has to grant the order. A judge has to grant the order, and that's what due process is in our society. I'd love to have this conversation with you guys. If you please would just let me talk about this. I wrote the legislation, so the due process is that a judge has to grant it. So you have to present evidence, and you can't do this frivolously. So it's not that someone from down the street can do it. It's not that an ex-boyfriend or girlfriend can do it. And so you have to present the evidence. The judge has to grant it. It is not a criminal act. What we do is we temporarily seize the weapons from the person to get them the help that they need. They can then also try to initiate, or they can also try to get their weapon back as well. And then we have penalties in place. We have penalties in place if someone tries to do it frivolously. And so we have those penalties, and that's something we worked on with Sheriff Bouchard to make sure that someone is not doing this to try to harass someone else. I know we're going to get to questions at the end. So this is part of the legislation that we're working on. Additionally, we've talked about universal criminal background checks. I think it's pretty sensible to think that if you're going to purchase a weapon, we should make sure you're not a criminal, right? I think we would all agree that we don't want guns to get in the hands of criminals. And so I know there's a lot of people say, well, do criminals follow laws? I get that pushback a lot. But here's the thing. We don't just abolish all laws because people break them. We don't say that murder, we're not going to legalize murder because some people commit murder. Well, we have laws in place because we have a civilized society. And so what we're trying to do is find that common ground where we can all come together. And so that's some of the legislation that we're working on. And like I said, I think I appreciate your passion on this issue, but if you would just give us a moment to talk about this.
Enforce the laws we got, you don't need more.
If you would
we talk about, if you want to talk about laws from other states, actually this law, and I'm proud that we actually, I guess red is our uniting color here. Everyone's wearing red on both sides of this issue. But this is also, when we talk about red flag laws, this was something, I was actually proud that President Trump came out and supported red flag laws. So this is something where President Trump, Marco Rubio, Lindsey Graham, some people on the other side of the aisle have actually been vocal about supporting red flag laws. So we don't think that this should be a partisan issue. We think that public safety is nonpartisan, and that's what we're pushing for here in Michigan, is what we can do to try to mitigate gun violence in the state. And that's what I'm proud to be the chair of our Legislative Gun Violence Prevention Caucus. I am a CPL holder as well. Like I said, I'm not anti-gun, I am anti-gun violence. And so that's why we're here to have this friendly discussion, and I'm hoping that everybody is willing to listen as we have this discussion. Thank you.
I know that feelings run high on both sides, but we're here to have our questions asked and to get answers. So if we can have cooperation from all of you, I'll be able to have as many questions as possible answered, and that's my only job here. And I came here to do my job. So the first question is, how do you see Michigan, and especially this district, being involved in the national debate over gun violence?
I can start with that. And by the way, I just wanted to tell you guys a quick story. I'm going to answer it, but I was thinking about it when we were. Okay, it's a good question. You're asking how we can be involved, and obviously I'm involved as your member of Congress. We voted on HRA. We voted, to reauthorize the Violence Against Women's Act, and close the boyfriend loophole. You guys gotta tune in on C-SPAN, okay? Because C-SPAN, no, and it's great. It's your legislature in action, and it's really kind of remarkable. It reminds me of this. You don't always get to hear it because if you don't have the mic, you can't hear the people in the audience. When we're taking votes in the Congress, and sometimes they're heated votes and there's a lot of passion. Each side is rumbling and roaring. So this is, look, we want to answer the questions. We obviously want to get the questions asked.
Please.
But we want to also say, well, you're asking me, you asked what role does Michigan have to play here? And I look at this as the 40,000 people in this country every year that are losing their lives to opioids. The 40,000 people every year in this country who are losing their lives in auto accidents. 40,000 people who are losing their lives to gun violence. Let's take those together and say, how can we save lives? How can we put into place a suite of policies and legislation that will, frankly, get in front of what is the third year of life expectancy decline in this country? Isn't that something that we want to see? Michigan's got a big role to play. And I'll be honest with all of you, I ran on it, and this is something that I hear from the students in our district, and they say, oh my God, I'm worried about going to school, I'm worried about these shooters, and they're looking for safety in our schools. And so, I'm certainly working on both sides of the aisle. And when we talk about enforcing the laws, that we already have in place, lying and trying is one of them. People who have felony backgrounds, who go in and try and buy guns, and then they don't get punished.
And they don't get prosecuted.
And they don't get, exactly. So we need to make sure that the agency,
So what new law is going to fix that?
yeah, that we want to make sure that the agencies that have the authority to prosecute have the resources to do that. You know who I had that conversation with last week? My Republican colleague from Texas. I had that conversation with Mike Quigley has a bill out for that. So that's how I see Michigan playing a role at the national level, and I'm proud to play that role for all of you. Thank you.
Again, we want to get through as many questions as I can. I'll need your cooperation. I have 11-year-old triplets, so I'm well equipped at making people stop talking. So the next question is, what role can the state play in legislating for gun laws that are more responsive to the voters of Michigan's values?
What a bullshit question.
So it's, sure, it's a similar question because obviously we have someone who's here from a federal level and obviously we're working on this at a state level. And so what we're trying to do is implement policies that we know data show in other states has worked. That we know in other states when they have implemented common sense gun safety legislation that the amount of gun deaths go down. And I think we all, I would hope that we all could agree that we have far too many people dying by gun violence in this country when you have, and I appreciate you bringing that up, because he talked about suicide as well. And that is an issue as well that we have to address. And when you talk about, and actually I do want to address that one, when we talk about suicide, when someone attempts suicide with a firearm, they are 90% likely to succeed in that attempt. But if they try it by any other method, it's about 20%. So the method that you are using is what makes the difference. And so what we're trying to do with the red flag legislation is put a pause, right? I mean, when we talk about our veterans, over 22 veterans die every single day in this country for suicide. And we owe it to our veterans. We owe it to our veterans to make sure that they can live a long and fruitful life. They served our country, and we should be doing everything we can to support our veterans. And so that's why when we talk about red flag laws, we have, there's a woman who has this story about her brother who unfortunately took his life with a weapon, and they tried to go to every place in the county that was selling guns and said, please, we're worried about my brother. It was her parents and and this woman, and they said, please, if you see this guy come in, we're trying to get him help, but just please don't sell him a weapon. Unfortunately, what they said is that if he is legally qualified to buy it and he has the money to buy it, then we have to sell him the weapon. And so if we had this red flag legislation, unfortunately he ended up buying a weapon and took his own life. And so if we had this red flag legislation, we could have put a pause on, right? We could have said that, you know what? Let's keep him from purchasing this weapon, let's get him the help he needs, and then he would still be with us here today. So there are things we're trying to do. Again, when we talk about universal criminal background checks, this is something, when you ask people across the country, gun owners and non-gun owners alike, over 90% of people support this, because we're not saying you can't buy a weapon. We're not saying you can't buy a weapon. We're saying you should be qualified to own a weapon. And I think that for people here on both sides of the issue, that's important, right? Because if people are buying weapons that shouldn't, that's only watering down the legal gun owners. That makes legal gun owners look bad as well. So those are the things we're working on here in Michigan. Like I said, this has worked in other states. Other states have implemented some of the sensible legislation, including safe storage laws, and I know Rep. Manoogian was part of that, introducing safe storage laws. So there's a lot of different things that we're trying to do here in Michigan, because we want to try to mitigate gun violence, and that's what we're attempting to do, and we have multiple people working on it in Lansing. Thank you.
All right, the next question. You're going to want to hear it. I tell you, you're going to want to hear it. You guys are getting better. Kudos. The Second Amendment guarantees the right to bear arms. Why are you trying to ban guns?
No qualifier.
No qualifier. No qualifier. I will come out here and talk about this because this is something I truly believe in. I am a supporter of the Second Amendment, but what we know, listen, if you guys can listen, we already know there are people in this country, we have laws, so there are some people who are not allowed to have weapons. If you are a felon, if you have been convicted of domestic violence, if you have been adjudicated as mentally ill, you are not allowed to purchase or own a weapon. And that is something that has stood for a long time. And if you guys, so there's also, I want to encourage my friends who are very passionate over here, I want to encourage you all to read the Heller decision. There was a court case, the Heller decision, and so you read it, so you know. So Justice Antonin Scalia, who we wouldn't call him, a crazy liberal, Justice Antonin Scalia came out and said that he, in essence, not anyone can buy a weapon. You can't have any weapon whatsoever carried in any manner whatsoever for whatsoever purpose. So there are restrictions on the Second Amendment, just like there are on every amendment. There are restrictions on the First Amendment. You can't scream fire in a crowded theater. So we know there are restrictions on amendments. And so what we're trying to do is, again, we're not trying to take guns away from people who are legally allowed to have them. We are trying to take weapons away from people who are intending to do, you can call me a liar all you want, but I would be happy to have a one-on-one discussion with every single one of you. We are trying to keep weapons out of the hands of people who are intending to do harm to themselves or someone else. And I think that's what we all should be supportive of.
Why has gun violence turned into a political issue?
No, don't touch me.
When I'm sure we are all against gun violence, can't we work together? Why has gun violence turned into a political issue when I'm sure we are all against gun violence? Can't we work together?
Back off yourself. Back up. I can deal with one at a time. Now, my question to you. Back up. I can do it too. My question is, if we're going to say that those that are mentally unstable are not qualified to have a gun, does that include our veterans with PTSD?
So, let me, and if you guys don't mind, and I appreciate everyone's passion on this, and I appreciate you. I know, but the process we're doing here is we have cards. I get
Answer your question right now.
But here's the thing, we are limited in our time, so we're trying to be as efficient as possible. We appreciate this discussion. Our Congresswoman came out here and talked about how we want to have a fruitful discussion, we want to respect each other, so I'm respectfully going to answer that. So the way we're looking at it is you have to be adjudicated, it has to be in the court of law as mentally unstable, mentally ill, if you will. So you have to be convicted of something. And that's all we're saying. We're not trying to change that. And what we're talking about with our red flag laws, we're not taking their weapons away indefinitely, and it's not a criminal charge. What we're saying is, we're not taking it. There is a finite period on the red flag law. It is a finite period, 1 year. But you can petition to get your weapon back. So that's what we were saying. So I can't answer another one because we want to be respectful of other people's time. And if you guys please, and respectful of all our times, because we only have a limited time here. So thank you.
All right, the next question is, why has gun violence turned into a political issue when I'm sure we are all against gun violence? Can't we work together?
We're not against it. That's why clubs like this are important, and this is why the NRA has got to go!
We love this country. That's why we're having this discussion. I have my Constitution right here. I carry my Constitution and I carry my CPL. This country, we all love this country. If you please let her finish her thought. Let her finish her thought. Let her finish her thought.
Because of Columbine. How do we get back to what we
Revolution's coming.
Which is common sense gun safety legislation.
Because, hold on, because I know what she said might upset a lot of people, but here's the thing, and I come from a very progressive area, so I know some of us won't agree on a lot of the issues, and I get that. But this is something I've been really passionate about, and I've done my research on this, and I've had conversations with countless people on both sides of the aisle, on both sides of the issue, and I think when we're talking about the NRA, the issue with the NRA is that they have deviated so far from what they originated as a group. And so, I am not against the gun owners of this country, and that's the issue. The NRA does not stand with gun owners. They are only for gun manufacturers. It's not about the owners, and that's a big issue. That's a big issue.
We are the NRA.
When we talk about gun violence, the reason this has become, one of the reasons it's become political, is it really hits to the very core of values, right? Everyone wants their families to be safe. We now are raising a generation of kids that when they go to school, they have to practice active shooter. That is just not right. When you fear your safety, you want change in your government. You want change in your laws. People are afraid for their kids, for the very future of their kids. And it is the responsibility of elected leaders, when they come together across the aisle and try to solve problems. We try to solve problems. 1,163 Michiganders died through gun violence. That's one person every 8 hours. And for anyone to say that's not a problem we should address, go tell that to those 1,163 families that experience gun violence directly in their house. Personal is political. We need to have responsible legislation where we can find the common ground. We've seen it in other states time and time again. We've seen the reduction in gun violence, so it's time to work together to get that done.
Congresswoman Stevens, can you tell us how you think that the national economy is affecting our Michigan economy and what you see on the horizon?
We talk about a lot of things at our town hall.
Oh, that's not what this is.
No, and I
We're certainly hearing the viewpoints here, but I will tell you all, something that I am really excited about is what I see taking place all over this district. I have visited 35 manufacturing companies. I sit down with these guys every single week. And you know what's happening in this district?
They can't find enough people to work.
An innovation renaissance. There's companies that are moving here because of the workforce that we have, and it doesn't need to be about political scoring points. It's about championing what we do here. You know, you think about 10 years ago, when we saw the largest drop in automotive sales in the history of the automobile. Look at communities like Commerce. Look at communities like Wixom. Look at how we have rebounded. We might not agree on the gun safety topic. I think that's clear tonight. But what I think we can agree on here tonight is that our manufacturing economy needs a proven advocate. And that is what I will do every single day for all of you in the United States Congress. And you better believe I am not afraid to work with anyone to move that forward. So I encourage you to also watch out to my office. It's about a skills agenda. It's also about fully funding our public schools and making sure that special education funding is funded. That is also something we're talking about. And also that making sure that our schools have the funds to keep themselves safe. Thank you.
Do you support allowing the CDC and other federal scientific agencies to study gun violence as a public health issue?
No. What we want in the Congress, and this is something that we just voted through on the House Education and Labor Committee, which is said, let's collect the facts. We voted this through on our committee. We said we want to understand and learn what is happening in our schools. We want to have access to the data. Frankly, as a subcommittee chair on the House Science Committee, this is a place of agreement. And by the way, I want to invite you all in for these conversations. Some of the best conversations I have in the Congress. There's only 435 of us, by the way, right? So I took office in the middle of a government shutdown. The longest government shutdown in history. And whether you work for the federal government or not, you're a taxpayer and you're paying for that decline in our economy. You're paying for the dysfunction. So tune in to the House Science Committee. Tune in to the conversations that we are having. Tune in to the conversations. Hey, I had a hearing last week. It didn't get covered, but I had a hearing last week. Very important to Michigan. And I want you all to know, because I'm not going to get a lot of time with you. And I know a lot of you already have your opinions about me before. But I want to let you know, I had a hearing last week on the future of work in the age of artificial intelligence. Who was sitting there with me? My Republican ranking member, Dr. Jim Baer. This man is a veteran. He served in the Vietnam War, lost his left arm, and it is one of the most incredible friendships you will ever see in Congress. Who did I pass the Building Blocks of STEM Act with? Dr. Jim Baer. Who did I pass the American Manufacturing Leadership with? Dr. Jim Baer. Who do I go to ask him, Jim, why can't we find agreement on this topic of gun safety? Guys, I'm going to talk all of you. You know, I'm happy to keep talking here. I got
Take more questions. Take questions.
Yeah, you know what? If we're gonna get some questions answered, you guys have to calm down a little bit. Let's be respectful. Do you want another question? All right, I'm gonna ask a question, but I'm not gonna shout. And by the way, I'm missing hamburger helper night tonight at home. All right? Can you tell me why Chicago has the strictest gun laws in the country, yet still has the highest gun violence in the country?
when we're talking about Chicago, geographically where it's located is very close to the state of Indiana. And so what you have is a lot of trafficking of weapons between Indiana and Illinois. You can look this up. And that's a big issue. But are there problems in these urban communities? Yes. And that's what we're trying to address. That is what we are trying to address with some of the legislation that we are working on, because we don't have the proper laws and mechanisms in place to try to prohibit people from getting weapons that shouldn't have them. We also have people who are able to buy, I think we'd have to limit the amount of weapons that people can buy at one time. I think that's a huge issue, because if you have far too many people buying far too many weapons and then bringing them over, that is an issue. That's what happens in Chicago, unfortunately.
Next question. The FBI and Washington Post report 150 total deaths from school shootings since 1999. Last year, 6,200 teens committed suicide. Last year, 6,200 teens committed suicide. Aren't we thinking about the wrong problem here?
How many people drunk drivers? Oh, what about people with cell phones?
This is what I was referring to earlier about the safety of our children, the safety of our families, mental health, a public safety issue. This is a big issue in this country. Again, 1,163 deaths by gun violence in Michigan. 1 every 8 hours. 1 every 8 hours. We clearly have to do something to reduce gun violence in this state. You should listen to your wife when she said calm down earlier. You should listen to your wife. You know what? We're working hard on legislation. We have to make sure that we have strong mental health, we have strong enforcement, and that we enact common sense legislation. You're so sweet. You know, the vast majority of the public, not only in Michigan, but across the country, agree with these common sense approach to follow to reduce gun violence. And 1,163. Say it with me. 1,163. That is too many. And we have to do something. And we have to come together. And we have to be responsible. And we have to enact common sense legislation. Again, we're here to talk about gun violence and common sense that we can do. And I'm so proud we're talking about schools too, right? Because of the values we teach our children about respect and dignity and working together and not shutting down other people. The very core values of democracy. And when I see those third grade kids or those fourth graders coming to Lansing and looking at the very place where we make laws and seeing a respectful debate on a very important issue where we're trying to solve problems and we respect each other, we talk around, we use data, and we use best practices from other states. That is how you solve problems, not by yelling, not by shouting.
Oh, you lied to us.
Not by being disrespectful. This has got to change in this country. What are we teaching our children when we cannot have a responsible, dignified discussion about these very important issues? So many issues and challenges in this state. We have roads that are crumbling. Our schools are not performing. We have mental health challenges. And what
Bring it. What have you done? What have you done?
What are we going to do about it? Safe storage legislation. Marijuana legislation. Intimate partner legislation. Background check legislation. We can make this to make this state safer, to have a bright future for our kids. Whether it's at the school or at everything else, our kids want to be safe. They don't want to be afraid. And it's up to us. As the adults in this state, as the adults in this state, to come together, solve these problems, have reasonable, honest, data discussions, and solve these problems. Thank you and have a wonderful evening.
All right, this is the last question. Why are assault weapons needed by civilians?
You don't even know what an assault weapon is! You're a moron! What's an assault weapon?
Civilians need assault weapons.
We don't have them! We don't have any! It's a media made-up term!
I understand this conversation's for definition. I support the assault rifle ban.
You better get bigger cup.
When we talk about guns, my friends that know this, right? So when we talk about automatic weapons have been regulated since 1934. And I think that is something good, right? If we have, that's all I'm trying to say is that people always want to compare guns to cars, right? And how we regulate cars. But I think if you're going to own a weapon, you should know how to use it. You should take a class. You should have a permit. We want to make sure, listen, we're not trying to take the guns away. We want to make sure that you're rightfully allowed to carry them. So we need to regulate them properly. Automatic weapons, if we were able to regulate assault weapons the way that we regulate automatic weapons, then we would be a much safer country. And so, again, that's what we are trying to do here. And that's what they're trying to do at a federal level.
Everyone, I would like to thank you very much for coming out this evening. It's been a pleasure having you, and be safe driving home. Thank you.
Wise man once said it's better to see the wire than pay one. Yeah, I'll be in a minute.
Thank you guys for coming. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for showing up here. Thank you. Are you here?
I want to do car, I want to do oil, and we don't want to take any. I used to, and thank you for all the responsible gun owners to our veterans.
But there's a difference though because it's a constitutional issue. So a lot of people are very emotional about it.
And people feel like something, they're not feeling heard, and things like that.
What is your...
Yeah.
You know what upset your NRA thing's gotta go? I am a life member of the NRA. I am not a terrorist. And I got my life membership.
Because I think this club is the original NRA. That's what I think we need to get back to. Thank you for coming, by the way.
Well, we're never going to agree, and I am one of your constituents. I do appreciate you coming out.
Call my office anytime.
Oh, I have a million times already, so.
What is your definition of an assault weapon?
All right.